and we'll get this recorded, and then anybody who's not able to join can certainly do this. I know there is another family medicine forum, which tends to be for outside graduates, be able to join and kind of learn a little bit more of what the department is doing. So some folks are gonna likely be over there. So what we're hoping to do, let's just do really quick introduction. So I'm Mike McKee, and I'm here at the Department of Family Medicine, Director for MDisability and Associate Professor. Lori?
I'm Lori Buis. I'm also in family medicine, also an associate professor.
Okay, so why don't we go, Liz, you're next.
I'm Liz Katz. I'm the science communicator for the Department of Family Medicine as well as the MDisability program.
Great. And PF?
E.F. Anderson, Emerging Technologies Informationist for the Health Sciences, and have been doing a lot of work with the disability community for a few decades now. So
Wonderful. And Samia?
Did you get a haircut? I quite like it. I just wanted to say that. My name is Samya. I use any pronouns, South Asian person with long dark hair and glasses and headphones. And I am the project coordinator for the Student Accessibility and Accommodation Services. So I do research and other project work with Dr. Okunlami.
Wonderful. Amo, are you there?
Yes, I am Amal Othman. I'm assistant professor at the Department of Family Medicine. I'm also the medical director for the Weight Navigation Program, Family Medicine, and I'm honored to be part of the MDisability implementation team for our future clinic.
Wonderful. Hey, Josie?
Hi everyone, my name's Josie. I'm a research assistant for Tyler and Mike.
Wonderful. Hey, Tyler?
Hi there, everyone. Tyler James, Assistant Professor of Family Medicine. I'm camera off right now because I'm in a dark room. It's a bad headache day. But I work with folks with developmental sensory disabilities and also Charge syndrome, which is a rare genetic condition that leads to deaf blindness.
Wonderful. Sorry about the headache. Lisa?
Turn my camera on.
Yep.
Can you see me? Hi, my name is Lisa Pizzo. I'm actually very new here. I am working with Dr. McKee and Tyler on the GO8 grant.
And great. Yeah, it looks like Vishana and India just joined. Vishana? Okay, maybe we'll give it a minute. India, are you around?
Okay, I'm here. Sorry.
Oh,
I
okay.
didn't say okay to record, so it wouldn't let me in. I am Rashana Chappell. I am an associate professor in the School of Social Work at the University of Central Florida. And I work on the AHEAD DC grant with Mike McKee and Michelle Mead.
Great. Vishana, just to double check, I got captioning here saying that you were not okay with it being recorded?
No, I didn't hit the button, so it wouldn't let me unmute. That's why it took me so long to get on.
Oh, okay.
If you don't agree
I just want
to
to be
the term,
respectful of anybody who's not.
Oh, no, I'm fine. Thank you so much for asking. But if you don't agree to the terms, it won't let you in the meeting.
Okay, great. Okay, India, are you there?
I am here. I'm sorry, I'm jumping and bouncing from meeting to meeting. I'm India Foy. I'm the manager for the Center for Disability Health and Wellness, also coordinator for AHEAD DC, and I work closely with Rashana and Mike and PF and Don, and I'm sure some others on here. I'm going to have to step away for a second, but I'll be right back.
Okay, no problem. Thank you so much. So what we're hoping to do is to kind of start with Lori. And Dr. Buis has actually has a recent announcement and kind of share a bit some of the work that she's doing with a local organization. And this is actually the first time I've heard about it. And I was excited to hear about what she's doing and if there's potential ways that we can actually collaborate. And then we're going to open it up and kind of move to the next phase, which talk about MDisability, future directions. So just to let everybody know, we did secure additional support for us to continue for another calendar year. And so I'm excited about that, but it also does task us to figure out what are areas that we want to sustain and grow. There's various areas in MDisability, especially in the primary care, family medicine area, that I think we bring a lot to the table, but I want to make sure that we're very intentional about some of these activities and search funding support for that as well. So, Lori?
Sure. Hi. So, welcome, or I guess thank you for having me, not welcome. I am putting in a link in the chat to CODI. And CODI is the Commission on Disability Issues, which I was recently appointed to be a commissioner on this commission. The language is still something I'm learning. Essentially, like, I don't have anything really prepared for today, but I had wanted to share with Mike and with you all the appointment that I have on this commission, because I think it's really interesting and unique what they're doing here in the city of Ann Arbor. And every time I sit in on a meeting, I just had one last night, I am so grateful for the community I live in, that like we have appointed in our community, in our government, this commission focused on disability issues. And so essentially, I put the link in the chat to our, a description of what it is we are and what we do. And I'm still learning. I was appointed, I want to say, maybe in January. I've only been on in a couple months, and I've only been to a couple meetings, but essentially we are a commission who is charged with thinking about disability issues in the city of Ann Arbor. And so there is like this multi-pronged focus of thinking about advocacy and working to provide a voice in our city government focused on these concerns. And our commission is made up of, actually, I don't know how many commissioners we have, somewhere on the order of maybe 12, maybe more, maybe less. And by charter, X number, I don't know what that number is, has to be somebody living with a disability. I am not living with a disability currently. However, I am the caregiver to my mother, who has many disabilities. So I bring a caregiver perspective, which was something that I think they really valued in having on the commission. How did I get here? It's really weird. Somebody approached me to tell me that I should run for city council. I was like, oh God, no, I don't want to be on city council. But they're like, no, really, you should run for city council. I was like, no, really, I don't want to be on city council. But I was willing to engage more in the community and our local government. And thanks, Mike, I appreciate it. But I'd said, I'm not willing to do that yet. But how about we talk about some other ways that I could engage in city governance? And I had heard about a few things, and someone had mentioned to me CODI that was looking for commissioners at the time. And I said, that sounds perfect. I'd be really interested in participating in that. And so I was vetted by the chair of the committee and our vice chair. And then they put me forward as a candidate, and they voted on me and accepted me as a commissioner to serve. I believe it's a 3-year term. And I would say that with the 3 meetings I've had under my belt, maybe it's 4, it's just been a really rewarding experience to see the types of things that we are working on and thinking about in the community. So like I mentioned, one of the roles that we play is advocacy and learning more about disability resources in the community and bringing people together. So I've gotten a lot more tapped into local events that are coming up. I know there is going to be a big ADA celebration coming up this summer that they're hoping that the commissioners attend, and distributing the word out to people who may be interested to join that. Some of you may be familiar who are local to the Visions conference that they hold at the downtown library branch. Visions 2024 is coming next month, I believe on June 5th. And there's a variety of vendors with accessibility equipment, and the Washtenaw area library for the blind will be there with a booth. Lots of different vendors and groups bringing awareness to different things. Lots of talks will be happening at the library that day, bringing the disability community together. I'm excited for that one. I'll be attending as a commissioner and bringing my mom with me, who attended a few years ago and just loved it. So again, learning about the community is one thing. We also are asked to lend a voice and a perspective on city policy. So for example, we had a guest speaker come maybe 2 or 3 months ago. The fire chief had come to speak to us about some potential changes that they are looking to make in emergency services. So currently, and I'm learning a lot about government and how different municipalities work. Currently, if you call for like a lift assist to have someone come help pick up someone who's fallen, communities will typically only allow so many of these for free before they start charging residents for those services. And apparently Ann Arbor is quite generous in that I don't think we currently charge, but they are looking to start charging, because there comes a point when you're taking away services from other people who could potentially need it. There are some situations where people probably should not be living on their own any longer. And it doesn't happen frequently, but there are occasions where somebody will be calling several times a week for many, many weeks. And it starts to become a social services issue. So the police, not the police, the fire department, who is part of that group who helps try to set policy, they're looking to make changes to the policy, but they're concerned about the implications that they're not considering. So they brought their potential policy changes forward to CODI, asking for feedback and input. And so that was something that was really interesting to learn more about how other municipalities work versus how Ann Arbor works and the changes they're looking to enact. And they want to make sure that they're thinking about all residents. Another issue that we have been talking about is access to accessible parking spaces downtown. You know, parking is always a big issue. That's something that has been frustrating. We have somebody who is doing a review of all of the local bus stops to make sure that hazards and things that may be in the way prohibiting people to get from the bus stop onto the bus, that we truly do have accessibility in that space. Some of the other, what are the other issues? There is discussion of making a resource of government buildings and their compliance with the ADA, so that people can understand and look up before they come downtown to a certain building or facility, the level of accessibility. I have asked, they want to start reaching out to local businesses like downtown, starting with the downtown area and broadening out, looking at accessibility of restaurants and businesses downtown. That's still in discussion. But, one of the things that I had asked, my mom is low vision, so I'm particularly sensitive to people with low vision needs. And I had said, it would be really nice if you could add a metric for, how dark is a facility? And if you are someone with low vision, is this a resource you could go to for being tipped off about the level of lighting in an establishment? So I think these are the kinds of things that we're thinking about and some of the initiatives they're working on. It's also been really rewarding and fantastic to hear other people in other parts of government come to our group to report on what they're doing from an accessibility standpoint. And so right now, all of the parks are being reevaluated for their accessibility. It's been a while, apparently, since they had last done that, and they're updating their resources and working on their transition plans for those parks that may have identified accessibility issues. So, you know, overall, I've not been on the commission for very long, but it's been a really rewarding and fascinating commission to be a part of. And just to see the spirit of inclusivity and the attention to detail that our community is trying to play has been just really, it's just made me really grateful for the community I'm a part of. So I think I'm happy to answer any questions if I can, but you know, happy to have a discussion. Mike.
So thank you for the overview. This is really great. And like I said before, I was not really familiar with Cody. So my next question is more kind of thinking forward for MDisability, also our department. Are there ways that we can actually work, support, advocate, not only more on the health care front, you know, but many of our buildings are also in the Ann Arbor sphere. So I was curious on, are there potential ways for us? Obviously, many of us are kind of overcommitted in many ways, and we already have you on the Cody Commission. So I was just curious on thoughts on how family medicine, the department, and disability, and for others who are interested, how we can actually support and make Ann Arbor even more accessible and inclusive.
So I think there's a couple answers to this. One thing I meant to point out that I forgot to was that there is a liaison on Codi who attends the University of Michigan. I don't remember which group it is, but there is a disability group on campus, not MDisability, but the group that is focused on student issues on campus. There is a liaison from Codi who attends those meetings and reports back on what's happening from the university perspective. I will also say that every meeting that we tend to have, at least in the ones I've been to so far, we tend to have a guest speaker. So the guest speakers we've had, like I mentioned, we had the fire chief one month. Yesterday, we had the new police chief come and talk to us. He just is brand new to the job and wanted to introduce himself and talk about you know, his perspective on policing, and just he wants to have good relationships with our group. But we also have guest speakers who come and talk about things that are of potential interest to the disability community. And I get the sense that those often are pulling from people on campus who are doing related work. So we had someone from engineering come and talk about some of the robotics that they're working on that are intended to help with accessibility for certain issues. I believe they've had someone in the AI space come and speak. So I think that there would be a potential for a guest speaker to come and talk about some of the initiatives, either from the health system perspective or the MDisability perspective, because I think, you know, just dissemination and connection is a big part of what is happening in those community guest speakers. I also had to laugh because the other night my mom started yelling out, and like my heart stopped. She's like, "Lori, come here, I need you." And I was like, oh my God, she's dying. Like this is it. And I dropped everything and I ran in there, and she's pointing to the TV and she's like, "Is that you? Is that you?" And it's like, "Yes, Mom, that's me. Please don't like make me think you're dying." But she was like flipping the channels, and all of our commission meetings are broadcast on CTN. And she just happened to like be watching, and she saw me, and I was like, oh, so there are people in the community who do actually watch these meetings. So maybe I need to look a little more alive when I'm sitting there, because we hold them over Zoom, and you know how it is on Zoom meetings. So that was my first understanding that, oh no, really, these are broadcast to the community. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a really interesting thing. And I think if there was any interest in talking about the perspective of healthcare in the area or what MDisability is doing, I would be happy to put you in touch with our commission chair who helps set the agenda, because I think there could potentially be interest.
Yeah, please do. Because, in terms of when I think of as community, we think of obviously accessible parks, accessible utilities. We also have, workplace, but healthcare is certainly an important area. So I'd be happy to, kind of facilitate, and anybody who's interested, we can certainly provide an overview. And then we could certainly also share some of the work that's happening in Center for Disability Health and Wellness. I think there'll be a lot of interest, and that's also more interdisciplinary too. So that'd be great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and I think, one other comment that I'll make is that, so I'd kind of learned a little bit about what the purview of the commission is in our meeting yesterday. I have a child who's about to go to Clegg Middle School next year, and the PTO president came and told me that at Clegg, apparently it's a 2-story building, and the elevator has been out of service for the entire school year. And apparently there was even an issue where a teacher had injured themselves on the 2nd floor and had to be carried down the stairs by like two teachers in the school. And they were like, we've been trying and we're getting nowhere with getting this fixed. Can you bring this to the commission? And I did bring it to the commission, and I think people are willing to speak on behalf of themselves as an advocate to say, hey, Ann Arbor Public Schools, this is not right and you need to fix this. And I know it's earmarked for being fixed, but I learned yesterday that Ann Arbor Public Schools, because it's not a city connected endeavor, our purview is only, it stops at the end of the city. So that was an important thing for me to learn, because we tend to think of everything all being connected, and really it's the city related issues that we have the opportunity to really try to affect change on. So I think there were some individuals who were like, I'm going to reach out to Ann Arbor Public Schools as an individual advocate, but CODI itself could not do that. So, and I know that we've got strong representation on city council. Aisha Gadzi Edwin is, I think she's in Ward 3. She attends most of our meetings and talks to us about what's happening at city council, and brings back and liaises with issues that we should be interested in and may want to weigh in on. And I mean, it's, again, we think of government as not working very well. And I'm not saying it works together and well all the time, but it's been really nice to see how Ann Arbor city government is actually working functionally in some capacity when it comes to disability issues.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Anybody else? That's okay, good. Any other questions? Okay. So yeah, please do, share what we're doing here at University of Michigan with CDHW and also MDisability. Where I'm happy to, potentially we could find a time, just kind of share some of the work that we're doing, especially on the healthcare front. Just trying to make things more accessible, improve the quality of care for people with disabilities. I think there's still not a lot of awareness on some of the things that have already taken place. So I think this is another great way, like you said, to disseminate the information. So I think this would be a use for people, especially people kind of struggling with an accessible healthcare, whether it's the provider or a setting. This might be information that they can kind of pass along. So
happy to do so.
Right, great. Okay, well, let's kind of pivot over if there's no other questions. So as I mentioned before, so we will get additional funding. Oh, sorry.
Oh, I can mention, PF, that the issue on snow removal is very much a hot topic issue that that CODI has been weighing in on and discussing for months now. And she's been really helpful in communicating. There's also another piece of policy that she's really going to bat for right now, and that's the right to sit at work. And so I know that's something she's been giving us routine updates on. So those two issues are very much under discussion at City Council.
For me, what happened was we had shoveled my walk, and then the city plowed it closed again.
Yep.
And then they gave me a ticket for
Yep.
it. And then they insisted that I show up in court to pay the ticket because paying the ticket wasn't good enough. And I was homebound at the time with my illness. And so they were giving me another ticket on top of the $400 I already paid
Yeah.
for them plowing my sidewalk shut. So I know they want the sidewalks open as an accessibility solution for people, but they're creating new problems with the solutions to the old problem.
Yeah, and I would say that at least amongst our group, this is a known issue, and raising awareness of the issue and trying to find reasonable solutions so that people understand that there are implications to policy that need to be considered because this is not appropriate, is something that, you know, she's working very hard to help people understand and find a better solution.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right. Thank you so much, Lori. Appreciate sharing the information. This is exciting, and it's always great to have another representative, and hopefully we can continue to move the needle a bit more. I know we're really coming from a healthcare standpoint, but I think that could certainly complement some of the work you guys are doing already. So it's great. So as I mentioned before, we do have another year of support. So we were granted funds to continue. These funds are mainly going to be just more on salary support and also to continue with the summer internship program. So we're very thankful that the chair was able to continue that. I also do want to spend a little bit of time talking about our areas that MDisability is focusing on, especially in the primary care front. And how we can actually just try to be intentional on focusing our energies, and keep in mind that we do have some resources, but they are limited. And so I want to make sure that we're using the resources and the people that we do have available appropriately, and hopefully we can continue to be successful and try to generate additional funding. So the first one is the clinical care front. I know Dr. Marsoff is out on maternity leave. She has a beautiful little boy. So she'll be out until the end of July. And I am really delighted that Dr. Othman and I have been meeting with her, and we're continuing to kind of brainstorm ways to improve the clinical care services, especially for people with disabilities. So we have largely focused on deaf and hard of hearing individuals, and Dr. Marsoff and Dr. Othman are very interested in providing care for intellectual and developmental disabilities. So right now, Dexter has sort of been like the main hub. Does not mean that that's the only area where we have provided these care, but we are mainly just using Dexter with the Deaf Health Center, a Deaf Health Clinic, and also with the fellowship being housed there. It's been sort of the area that we've been putting more of the energy that we've had. Dr. Rothman, anything else you want to add? I know we're trying to figure out how to improve on some of the console services there as well.
You know, Mike, one of the big challenge we have usually is actually figuring out, you know, how the model works and bugs show up later on. And my experience with the weight navigation program, that there are some stuff you don't see until you start your program and your clinical operation. So as we go, there will be bugs. But I think honestly, after running the program for 3 years now, what actually like alerted me at the last few months that we don't have control from our department on administrative support when the programs grow up. You are kind of like basically depending on UMMG to provide staffing to support your program, and depends on where they at in this, you may actually have very limited resources. So one of the things that kind of like worked for us, having some of the research money dedicated for kind of like admin research support, kind of like, person that kind of like catch these bugs in the beginning and help us figuring out the right process for it until we have the support from UMG. So with the limited fund, I will say it is important to kind of like dedicate some of the fund in a position that will allow us to kind of like monitor outcome and what we're doing, but kind of like behind the scene, really looking at the big picture of the clinical process and operation itself, and help us kind of like drawing this map in the right direction.
Yeah, thank you. I know the Deaf Health Clinic, we largely were able to kind of get things going through the Medicaid match program. So that was helpful for us to do more of an integrated care model. We were able to hire a social worker that was sign language fluent. The sustainability, continuing that is always kind of a challenge. And I know we also kind of struggled to figure out how we could support the social worker, and unfortunately we lost our social worker. And I know one of the big areas that I have asked for is to have a dedicated sort of disability focused social worker across all of our clinics. And I think the need is there. I think it certainly could justify the amount of effort, just even having a one FTE of social worker for that. So I totally agree with some of the struggles that we often just have to kind of do a lot of work on our end, not really a lot of administrative support. And also even getting administrative support is very, very difficult, even if you have research funding. A lot of research, especially more pilot, do not provide administrative support. And so that becomes a little dicey too. With that being said, I know the mic here with Dr. Marsoff, we have talked about the Medicaid match, and I am hopeful that we can actually pursue that, just to kind of do the same thing we did with the Deaf Health Clinic. And I'm wondering if maybe we could have you included and figure out if there's a way to kind of jumpstart something along those lines. I have honestly struggled with other pilot programs. I know there's the WIT Foundation. We did apply with Dr. Erickson, did not get funding. That was mostly on the medical education front. But the clinical areas, what I have often heard is that you're making money, so why do you need money? And so that's always been kind of a challenge. And then when you get into research, it's hard to often get into the clinical front to generate revenue as a result of that. So it's it is a challenge. I agree.
Think about like project manager, someone who's like oversee the research project and look at the operation to actually facilitate the project. Look at dashboards that allow you to kind of like have a way to monitor your patient outcome, whatever you're doing, where they're going, who's actually falling off, the clinic, and who's actually continuing with us. These actually kind of like can produce a lot of good research data that support the program in the future. Once you grow, you can actually show people, like what you did. We actually, like, because of this, we actually have a paper that will be next week in JAMA about the program, but actually having these kind of like mindset from the beginning, how to prove that what we are doing, effective and has good outcome from population management standpoint. That I think helped us. We still struggle with the admin support, but I think we have some data to say like we are doing the right thing and we have actually good outcomes that worth your support. So I will actually like dedicate some of the fund in this area to like show the outcome, because your clinical work unfortunately will not show up by itself. Yes, you're not going to make revenue, right? Like you got to cover your expenses, but there will be no margin to say this is actually a program that makes money for the system. So we have to look at other outcomes that we want to show it in data to kind of say that this program should be sustained with other resources from the health system.
When you say data that you have, what are you talking about, the weight navigation clinic?
We created a dashboard that was not actually available in the system, like similar to what cardiology did, when they try to manage their patient. So, but we created one from scratch, looking at like our patient, who's actually like been attending on regular basis, who's actually falling off. We were like, basically the dashboard allow us to see who's actually losing weight, who's not losing weight, who's actually gaining weight. And that allowed us to create a population management outreach project, to kind of like reach out to these patients and see if we can get them back to get the help they need. So, the ultimate kind of like picture of having a dashboard and like population management, we know you get to a point, your capacity is limited as like, the number of physicians who can see these patients. So when you start to have more and more return visits, the capacity start to be a problem. So the whole idea was like, does everybody need to come back? Probably not. Those who are doing well can actually like, be like seen every 6 months. Those who need actually the frequent visit every 3 months will be called in earlier. So it kind of like look at the future of like program capacity and try to make us realistic in like our resources and how to sustain the progress of the program.
So in terms of, do you have any thoughts on whether MDisability, are there targets or ways we can address that? Because I know like the fellowship program, for example, does have some administrative support, but it's supposed to be fellowship only. But is there perhaps a way to leverage that, expand that to kind of help a bit on, because you want to have a robust clinical care with diverse patients with disability to support the fellowship program. I don't know if you have any thoughts along those lines, and things that
I don't have
MDisability can help
immediate
support.
one. I don't have immediate one, but the question is like, like I think we need to start thinking, if like 2 years from now, someone asked us, do you think your program is successful? We're going to say, yes, it's successful because 1, 2, 3. So what are the 1, 2, 3 we want to actually to show up later on to prove that our program is successful? And if, we decided like what this should look like and like what is the answer for this question, then we start to actually look at how we can actually prove it. I know you have like an awesome research team, and there are some people who are smarter than me in actually having the question for the research. I'm not good at that. I can support, like I can help you like clinically, like in the process of like how to get to this answer, but like from research standpoint, we need some, people with us to brainstorm ideas, like what will actually make us look successful. If there's any like nationwide efforts towards certain goals and we can achieve some of these goals by our program, then we should actually try to start think about how we can actually document that. Some stuff can be like, can need actually documentation in your note from the first clinic you have with the patient, so you can track the data. Some information maybe needed to be in like a spreadsheet in my chart, so we can actually, collect these data later on, or have a dashboard that can pick up the data for us later on. So the more, like answers we have, the better we can plan for the clinic and make sure we have the data from day one to have like good answers at the end.
I know with the Deaf Clinic, we primarily collected data both on ED hospital care use, and also we did collect a number of behavioral health outcomes, partly because that was really the focus, the primary objective of the Medicaid match. So I totally agree. One other thing that we did is we did collect a little bit of economic data just to help, and that helped us. I think it was helpful to justify continuing our social worker to be involved. The social worker obviously became more available for other social worker needs, so that was helpful just to kind of retain her beyond the Medicaid match. So I agree with all of the data outcomes. I guess my point is we want to be supportive, we want to be collaborative. So if you have a project, a disability project, let us know whether if you want to just kind of write a brief kind of proposal, and we can figure out how we can support you. You know, if there are research needs, analyst needs. I know many of us do research, but we can also try to figure out how we can help support and like an analyst need, whether we can get somebody from the research group to be able to do that, or if it's more straightforward, maybe somebody can actually help. So, and then that's not just going to be more the quantitative or chart abstraction, but it also could be even qualitative as well. So I think some patient stories are often pretty powerful. So I want to open it up other thoughts on the clinical front, and I want to make sure we have some time to talk about the medical education, provider education as well. Tyler, I know you do a lot on the medical record, and also with the rare diseases, doing some work. I don't know if you have any thoughts.
With respect to clinical care coordination?
So clinical care
Or med ed.
coordination, but it's also about outcomes as well. Sounds like there's a need for both. Correct it, Emil?
Yeah. So like in terms of like medical education, I think that what the Michigan Lend program did this past year, so I was a long-term trainee in Michigan Lend, which is hosted by Wayne State University's Michigan Developmental Disabilities Institute. And it partners with all of the major universities and academic medical centers in Michigan. They had a genetics module, which I think did a very good job of covering rare diseases. Also, something that is important to mention is that many states have these organizations called RDACs, Rare Disease Advisory Councils. And these advisory councils are typically hosted through the Departments of Health and Human Services. And they are meant to provide patient education resources, referral resources, and also technical assistance and kind of guidance for clinical care coordination and improving patient outcomes. Michigan is one of the last states. We're not the last, but Michigan is one of the last states to create a Rare Disease Advisory Council. And currently, as of this week, the appointments have been officially made. We're just waiting on appointment letters. But I was appointed to that council. And so one of the goals of that council, though, is to assist kind of with this improving medical education and workforce development in addition to care coordination for patients.
Great.
And yes, PF, I agree. I was actually surprised to learn that Florida had a rare disease advisory council pretty early on, which was funny. I was also informed yesterday. So there is a patient family like genetic information clearinghouse for patients with rare diseases that are genetic in nature. They have been cut their funding from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. And so it looks like their entire network, which includes regional and state offices, are going to be completely dissolved, including their websites. I will post that website in the chat for those of you that are interested in looking. I have been encouraged by a leader of the Southeast region to go in and basically scrub as many resources as I think are necessary from it.
Okay. The other area that MDisability does a lot of work on is the medical education front. So we do, just a reminder, we have a provider webinar series that we provide quarterly, usually every 3-4 months. And that's really intended for those who are more established in their careers to provide some overview on disability topics or some care guidelines. And then the second one is a disability health elective, which is offered for third and fourth year medical students. It's a 2-week clinical elective. And so we're one of the few, perhaps the really the main clinical program where we can actually allow medical students rotate with a variety of disability health experts in the clinical front. So they're actually working, shadowing these various preceptors. And so the third one is actually the ASL course that we have. And that course is really designed to provide good communication practices, working with deaf or hard of hearing individuals. They do also work with the language instructor to get some basic American Sign Language skills. One of the things that has come up recently that we really want to try to do a better job is to start recording and putting onto the MDisability website. So we had a really great interaction with the medical interpreter services, showing differences between, like, for example, video remote interpreting from a staff member and in person. And so one of the things that I do want to make sure we're very intentional is getting these resources recorded and hopefully put online so that other people can tap into. And then the other one that we do have is the standardized patient program. So this is a partnership with the HEAD DC under the Center for Disability Health and Wellness. One of the challenges that we've had with that is that it's hard to find a good chunk of time in the medical student schedule for us to offer this. And so we've had some struggles there. We have some ideas about going forward, but this is a standardized patient program using 7 community members with different types of disabilities to kind of function as an objective structured clinical exam. It's called the OSCE, and we're hoping that they can be integrated into the OSCE program here at the medical school. So the doctoring course, I know some of the students have requested to expand and improve on some of the disability health curricula. And we're hoping to integrate that as our next step into the doctoring session next April. And we're going to have kind of a hybrid where there will be a group sort of structured format to interview a standardized patient and to have a panel discussion so that we can accommodate the 170 students that we have, which is right now is not going to be feasible with the 7 community members. So those are the 4 main medical education areas that we have worked on. I have been very transparent to many of our leaders that we don't really get funds back. So some of these are electives, medical students paid for them, but we have gotten very little support or funds back to us to support instructor fees or just even honorariums, community member support. And so that has been continued to be a big struggle beyond just getting grants. So, so I'm going to pause there. Thoughts about medical education. And this is not just to talk about the 4, but if there are additional opportunities for disability to get involved in as well.
One area I'm really interested to create once we have like a process for the main primary care access clinic is actually to create like a weight navigation kind of arm for individuals with disability. You know, a lot of people with disability get on medications, you know, that increase their weight, and also they have limited mobility and they struggle and they develop like metabolic syndrome, and nobody's stopping this. We just keep feeding the cycle, you know, with medication. And I think like if I get to have a dietitian to work with me and like be like well educated about how to work with this population with more creativity, I think we can actually help improve quality of life. But again, you know, that I think will be like a branch that can be created later on, or like a referral arm from the mother, you know, clinic that we will create for primary care.
So I want to make sure I understood the suggestion correctly. So you're suggesting to have some sort of primary care referral to like this sort of like a weight navigation clinic, but for those who have various types of disabilities because of for example, psychotropics, medications that often lead to substantial weight gain. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, the reality is most of the weight management programs we have, either will exclude them because of the Medicaid, they have, or they are so structured not to work with flexibility with people who have different disability, especially cognitive disability. So I think like if we like have the right structure and we have, like some, like dietitian who know how to use the right approach can help them. We're not talking about just people who have just a high BMI. The high BMI is not the big deal. It's the metabolic syndrome that actually build up, and we keep actually putting them on medications and insulin and without addressing that they need actually someone to hold the hand and work on lifestyle. A lot of the antipsychotic medication really increase the appetite in a huge way. Like these patients really struggle when you send them to dietitian to tell them eat less and exercise more or move more. That's completely inappropriate advice for some of them.
So we're working closely with Dr. Steve Erickson. We have basically a polypharmacy program that was funded through Blue Cross Blue Shield. It's wrapping up. And there will be another project that will be more expanded through the ART4, which is part of the AHEAD DC project. So we are doing a pharmacy kind of referral where a pharmacist does an overview and provides some input. What would be different from something like that versus a referral to a weight navigation clinic? I'm being a little
The reality is most of the time you're not gonna remove the medications that actually cause the weight gain because it stabilizes their mood and it's a quality of life.
Okay.
So the reality is they need this medication, but they need actually to work around it. And there are actually like medical and dietary intervention that can help them at least stabilize their weight around this medication. So when I have some in my practice, and most of the times when you look at the journey where like how they got to this medication, you don't want to rock the boat here. Like that's like a big quality of life to stabilize the mood by itself, but we cannot ignore the side effect of this medication that take them in the route of the metabolic syndrome. And again, that's not everybody, but once we have the clinic and we see the percentage of population who meet this like criteria, we may decide if it's worth kind of like having these resources for them or not.
Thank you. I know I would love to follow up more on that. Samia, I'm sorry to keep you waiting. Go ahead.
No worries, no worries. That was those were good points to be made. I'm trying to figure out. Okay, here we go. I lowered my hand. So regarding medical education, and understanding that there are very limited resources available for expanding this, I wanted to bring up something that I have been developing on my own, which is a disability culture kind of arts and humanities based project that is directed towards healthcare professional students. It is essentially a curriculum with lots of content that is generated by people with disabilities, whether it's videos, performances, essays, whether it's related to medicine or just to their personal lives, directed towards healthcare professional students with the goal of humanizing this population and to facilitate dialogue about ableism within the healthcare systems. And so this is a curriculum that's been kind of in development, but there's not that much opportunity to pilot it and then just see how it's responded to. And so what I wanted to bring up is this thing that I've been discussing with MSDHA, which is the potential for having workshops, and they were interested in hosting these in their own time. But if I could partner with anyone who has access to this medical education space, that is something that I'd be willing to do within like as a part of like my own personal project, with the goal of eventually producing the data that could help support getting additional funds to sustain such a thing. So if that makes sense. And yes, PF, I do need to schedule a meeting with you at some point. But I know that there is a medical humanities pathway within medical education, but I think the reason I like hesitate to use the word humanities is specifically because I don't want it to necessarily be like pushed away into like one pathway that only like certain students will approach or have access to. But yeah, I agree it's a good starting point, and I'm just curious to know any ideas about this or any like feedback or questions that people might have, because it's something that I've been working on I've been working on this since grad school, essentially, when I took a disability studies course. And I thought that as a biomedical engineer who'd worked in like healthcare spaces, I saw a huge disconnect between disability studies as a field and the steps that people were taking for disability advocacy in healthcare. I thought that there was room for a bridge to be built across them. And yes, PF, I've connected with MSDHA about this. So
Okay,
yeah.
great. Yeah, so I was also going to suggest the MSDHA. It's a good group. Yeah, let us know. Do you have, I don't know if you have something where we could just take a look and see the content? Because honestly, some of this content we could even encourage students who rotate or come through various medical education within the MDisability. I mean, this could be part of their instruction or some immersion. So I'd be happy to talk a bit more just to figure out how we can try to get this better integrated. I think there's also honestly a notion where a lot of the disability studies, even if it's undergrad or other programs, that is not sufficient for the medical school. And the reality is that it's probably more than sufficient. And so I think a lot of people try to reinvent the wheel. And so it'd be nice to see if there's areas that we could partner together, synergize some of the efforts. So I would love to learn more about it.
I mean, I'm not, oh, I guess it's 1 p.m. I will drop a link to you to a presentation I made a long time ago, a
Okay,
very
great,
long time
great.
ago. And in this presentation, on one of the slides, there's a link to a sample syllabus. Again, these are a little outdated to what it looks like now. But if there is more interest, I can, meet with some people and talk about what we can, it's meant to be an evolving course that changes with the times. So if anyone is interested in discussing partnership around this, would be happy to talk more. This is just the pitch, so again, it doesn't go into like the nitty-gritty of each facilitation guide. This is the sample syllabus, the second link that I just sent. But yeah, feel free to take a look at these materials.
Yeah, great. I'm going to reach out to you. I'll just take a look at this, and I'm happy also to share what we have been doing, and maybe there's opportunity to kind of share.
Oh,
So that'd be great.
absolutely. I think all of these
That'd be
things
good.
need to be connected, and not a separate thing. But yeah, I also need to go to my next meeting. But thank you so much.
All right. All right. Thank you, everyone. Dawn, I'm happy to stay on for just a couple more minutes. Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.